It definitely suffers from head book. There's things in this scene that the writer can see, and
Yeah.
they're taking it for granted that the reader can see it, and we can't. It's not here.
Yeah.
It's in your head book. If that doesn't make any sense to you, if that's the first time you've heard that Drakeism, I have kind of coined a bunch of Drakeisms. This one is, you don't realize it, but when you're writing, you're actually writing two books simultaneously, one in your head and one on paper. To you, they're the same book. So when you read your paper book, you're also reading your head book at the same time, and you don't notice that there's two books, but you can only give away the paper book. So that's why when somebody says, you lost me here, this doesn't make sense, I'm confused here, those are the most important critiques for you, because it means, because what most writers will do is, I don't understand why you don't understand that. It's so obvious. Yeah, it's obvious because it's in your head book. Like, no, don't have that reaction. Go, oh, I screwed up. I didn't put that information for you, did I? I have been a bad steward of information because it's in my head book and I forgot to put it on the paper book. Releasing your inner dragon.
So, Drake, how important is the first page of a book?
Make or break career important. That's how important it is. Well, and it also depends on what you're doing. We discussed this actually this week in the writer's room. If you're going for the industry, it's vitally important. You know, it's so insane that people are like, you know, you've heard this before. Your first sentence buys you the first paragraph. The first paragraph buys you the first page. If you can get an agent or an acquisition to read the first page, you've crossed the biggest hurdle. You know, now it's more of a where you're at long term. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to, you know, we've been asking for submissions, and now we have quite a few of them. We're going to go through them. We're going to read them. We're going to basically say, we're going to pretend as if we were agents or publishers, acquisitions editors. We're not, but we're going to pretend as if we are. And then we're going to say, you know, basically, you know, just say, I'm out or whatever, but keep reading until the, you know, like, don't stop when the first one does. So normally back in the day, when I was at conventions, we used to do this a lot, and I'd be like the only writer on the panel, and there'd be two agents and two acquisitions editors, and I'd be the writer dude up there. And it was always so funny because I'd be the first one to go, I'm out. Every time I'd be the first one. And then when I would talk to them afterwards, they would go, yeah, I would have been out when you said that, but I don't want to be a dick on stage. So I want to make it seem like I'm nicer than what I'm like, yeah, but I don't have a dog in that fight. I'm not rejecting anybody. So I'm going to tell them the truth of when they actually would get rejected. But every time they were like, yeah, you were right. That's when I went. So that's what we're going to do. But as always, since I'm a storyteller, I do want to, I think this is kind of I've had a lot of moments in my career where it was just these pivotal moments that impacted me and changed the way I thought about this industry. And I may have told this story on this podcast before, but it definitely is a part of what we're doing here. So one of the very first agents that I ever befriended, and it was early in my career, maybe only a couple months into being a professional writer, he does not represent anything that I write, which is why we could be friends. And so we were out to dinner, and he had said something earlier that had really, really made me angry as an artist and as a writer. And so I wanted to call him on it, because earlier we were in a panel and he had said, I only need to read the first line of your manuscript to know what quality of writer you are. I can reject it based off of that. And when I heard that, I was furious. I was like, no, there's no way you can read one line and know the quality of that writer. You are so full of crap. And so I called him on it. And then we talked about it. And of course, I didn't believe him. It didn't matter what he said that night. I'm early in my career. 20 years later, I'm like, yeah, I know the quality of a writer after I read their first opening line. That's really all I need.
So in like talking about this, I want to just tell a story of like when I sent in the very first chapter, the very first draft of The Hidden Blade to one of those conventions. And it got rejected in the second paragraph because I was very young, very stupid writer at the time, was my very first book.
Not stupid.
I put
Inexperienced.
in a flashback, paragraph 2. And the editor who rejected it said, if you have to flash back in your first chapter, you are starting your story in the wrong place. And it had a notable impact on me, obviously. So,
for anyone who's listening to this podcast.
Yeah. So if your story is up here and we reject it, I hope that it has the same level of impact on you and helps you see where you're going wrong.
Yeah. Now, I started by saying it does depend. So let's finish that up just before we start. If you're going to the industry, here's the heartbreaking reality of submitting to the industry. You love your story. You think your story is awesome. But the big mistake that you make when you submit either a query letter or first chapter, first 3 chapters, whatever is, you think you're sending it to a person who actually wants to read it. That's the biggest heartbreaking thing to come to understand about the industry. They don't want to read your submission. And that may sound weird, like an agent, where you're like, wait a minute, what do you mean an agent doesn't want to read query letters? I thought their job is to look for new clients. Nope, that is not their job. Their job is to sell their current clients. They do have to look for more clients, but that's not their job. They make no money looking for clients. It's a massive waste of time. They have to trudge through thousands of pieces of garbage to get one that is at least less amount of garbage that they might be able to edit and help you get to the point where it's not garbage. Like, it's not fun for them. There is nothing they want to do. So they want to reject those. And also, think about what you do for a living. Let's say your boss comes in. Let's say you work hard 8 hours a day, every day, 5 days a week. And your boss comes in and says, hey, I need you to do something for me every day. It's going to take you about an hour. It has nothing to do with your job. It doesn't impact your job in any way, shape, or form, but you will do it every single day. And it will take you an hour every single day. And you'll still do the 8 hours of work that you were doing. And you're still only getting paid for 8 hours. How excited are you going to be about that extra work? How many shortcuts are you going to take to try and get it done before the hour so that you can get on to your 8 hours? That is query letters to agents. And that sounds cruel and harsh, but they're people and they have a job to do. And their job isn't those query letters. Yeah. And so that's why query letters are so hard, because you have to write it in a way. You have to understand you're sending it to somebody who hates you. You're sending a love letter to someone who despises you, but you want to ask them out on a date. That's what you're doing. And so if you think about it like that and you're like, wow, okay, this girl hates me. She loathes me. She spits on me every time I see her, but I really want to take her to the prom this year. So I need to craft a letter that's going to make her want to at least respond to me in a positive way. That's what you got to think about. That's why query letters are so hard, because they're not easy. So we're going to act that role. We're going to be doing that, the cruel version of it, and based off of our experience. However, fans are much more lenient. Most fans will not reject you after one page. They will not reject you. I mean, unless you are doing something really egregious. There are things, everybody has their pet peeves. Every reader has something that really ticks them off, and they're just like, I'm out. I don't even want to give this person a time of my at all. But you still have to do something. There's so much out there. The white noise, the competition that you are dealing with. I mean, there's a million new books get published, fiction books get published every year now. Over a million. No one could read that many. It's impossible. So it is a buyer's market. And if they hit, and readers are becoming more and more and more picky about what they're doing. In some genres. I mean, every genre is different. And, some genres are way more, and we've talked about that before. But just understand, if you're going indie press, you still want to do your best to try and hook them in that first page. You want to make sure you're not doing any of the big grievances that the vast majority of audiences has. It's subjective, so you're never going to please everybody. I think I've told the story where I had that one guy come up to me And he's like, man, I really like your writing style. And this was a really good story. I will never read you again because you use nix instead of no. And that really bothered me. Like, really? Like, that's why you actually like, you found an author you like. And because I use nix instead of no in this one saga, you have now put me on the blacklist. You have banned me. Like, that seems pretty petty. So yeah, never underestimate how petty a reader can be. So yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Hopefully the authors that have sent stuff, and you didn't do any prep work for this one, did you? You didn't read or
No,
any. Yeah.
I
So
haven't read a single page.
we're literally both going into this blind. We have no preconceived, we have no idea what we're about to open up. We did that on purpose to make sure that we were not biased in any way. This is just true reaction in the moment as it happens.
I am going to share my screen.
So those that are on YouTube, you'll be able to see what is being sent to us. Those that are on podcast, you're just gonna have to listen and use your imagination.
All right. I'm going to start with story 1. I've stripped names and story titles and so on out, of course.
But you didn't change prologues or anything, did you?
No.
Okay.
No. The boy could only run.
I'm out.
Nothing else came to mind. Hmm?
I'm out.
Okay.
You can keep going until you're out, but I'm out on the sentence
Yeah.
1.
The boy could only run. Nothing else came to mind to scream or fight or anything, but from the sound of it, his pursuer was close behind. I'm out. I'll finish reading the page and then we can discuss why.
Yep.
Okay. The boy could only run. Nothing else came to mind to scream or fight or anything, but from the sound of it, his pursuer was close behind. A leaping, running step kept a steady beat as he tried to flee, but the beat behind him was faster and somehow more dedicated. It was midday and the fields were empty, everyone having finished their work before the heat kicked in. Nobody was there to witness his flight or attempt to intervene. And before he knew it, Pierre was knocked to the ground, the blow banishing any cry he could have made as the beast straddled his back, pinning him down and laughing. The beast certainly didn't look like the savage creature he was. He and Pierre were both children of the nearby town, Pierre a little older, with the same brown hair and eyes as most locals had. It would be easy to mistake the beast for any other boy. Words finally welled in Pierre's throat, and he began to scream, "Get off me!" But it was cut off by a blow to the head. The beast laughed, a rasped and haughty noise unbefitting a child, and rammed a hand against the back of Pierre's head, forcing his face into the dry dirt. From his peripheral vision, Pierre saw the glint of something in the beast's hand and tried to scream, but the sound came out only as a strangled cry as the blade stabbed between his ribs. The world in his view suddenly shrank, everything falling away to contain only the agonizing pain of the assault as the beast stabbed him again and again. He was going to die, he realized. The monster was going to kill him, and an odd peace settled over him at the thought as even the pain faded. I think that's a fair read, because I can see where the hook is. It's just buried.
Yeah.
So why are you out on sentence 1?
All right. So really 2 reasons. One, it's a tell. There's nothing engaging about it. There's nothing that makes me want to be a part of it. But the big reason is that it starts off with a vague the boy. We get the boy's name in paragraph 3, Pierre. Why since there's no payoff for hiding who the narrator is, the only time I would ever hide who the narrator is if there's a payoff for it. If it is actually, once the reader figures out why they don't understand who the POV is, they go, oh my God, that was cool. Then great. But there's no payoff for it. It's just a boy, and then it's Pierre. So, again, I talk about this all the time. You want to do things very, very quickly, ground them in whose head they're in, ground them where we're at, and give me some type of conflict. The bad thing is that a reader's going to give them at least what you read, and there's a lot of interesting in here. There's a lot of potential in here. And so while the industry would be done after that first sentence, no one's getting past that first sentence, not an agent, not an acquisition, they're going to be completely out. There's a lot of potential here, which is a shame that
yeah.
the
So I'll
industry
tell
was
you why
leaving.
I rejected on sentence two.
Mhm.
I rejected on sentence two because it was, from the sound of it, his pursuer was close behind. There's nothing immersive about
Right.
that.
It's all tell.
It's just, yeah, it's all tell. And the
Continues the
thing
tell
is,
process.
yeah, and the thing is, there's a lot, as you say, like, it's very interesting that there's a child that Pierre thinks of as a beast that
But
is
is it a
attacking him.
child?
Like, the whole thing is interesting. There's a great hook here.
Mhm.
But because the beginning is very generalized and very tally, you would lose, as you say, you would lose the industry. But the hook down there is that he's being chased by another kid. Establish that faster, and you have a way better chance.
Well, also in medias res, in the moment.
Yeah.
We want it to be visceral.
Mm,
You're obviously trying, this author's obviously trying to write in a limited POV, and
mm,
so therefore be limited. There's a lot of times where he slips into a very omniscient kind of way of writing, like nobody was there to witness his flight or attempt to intervene. Like he's definitely
mm.
not thinking about that at this moment. There was one about this hair.
Yeah, there's a kind of omniscience going on, but at the
Right,
same time, there's a kind of limitedness going
right,
on. And
exactly.
I
You're
would stick to
constantly,
the limited, especially for this kind of scene.
yeah. So if we start off in something more visceral, like, so there's two ways you could start this. You could start it with the visceralness of running in blind panic,
Mm,
or you could even start it off down where, so like, and before he knew it, like talk about pushing the reader to arm's length
yeah,
with that line, as opposed to, um, the air whooshed from Pierre's lungs as he was slammed to the ground. That's the other thing is verbs are just so important. So when we have stuff
yeah,
like he was knocked, um, you know, the beast straddled his back, it pinned him down. These are just all mamsy-pamsy verbs that every single one of
mm,
them we could replace with much more visceral, much stronger verbiage that's going to force the reader to be engaged, as
yeah,
opposed to, you know, it was midday and the fields were empty. Everyone having finished, so that we have a
yeah,
weird ing verb that we don't need. Um, so there's just a lot of passing. And again, the funny thing is this is the perfect example of, like, if you had listened to me at the beginning of this and you were like, well, I think you're wrong too, Drake. There's no way you're going to tell a person's writing from the first sentence. That first sentence tells me this writer is going to be always pushing the reader at arm's length, going to be a very telly writer, a very unengaging writer, a very unemotional writer. And then we go through the first page and that rings true every single paragraph that we continue reading. So like I said, I disagree with the agent as well when he said that, but it really is that writers, your fingerprint can get stronger as you improve, especially if you're in something like the writer's room or whatever, where you're engaging with people that are forcing you to get better week after. I mean, and it never stops. I'm working on a short story to use as a marketing piece. I've got the chapter as good as I can get it. I'm very, very happy with it. However, I know that I want to do more with it, because while my fan base is going to be ecstatic with it, and I've proven that with the beta readers, I've got other people that are almost fans of mine that are like, man, this hooked me, but it took me 2 pages. It took me 3 pages. And so I'm reading and I'm like, I just can't, I'm too close to this. So I sent it to you. And I was like, do your worst. Cut everything you think is cut. And then you sat down with me and went, like, you teach this and this other stuff. Why aren't you doing it with this? And it was such a, this morning, an hour ago, like this isn't Drake 5 years ago. It was such a, I can't believe that I literally do what you're telling me to do in these other aspects of writing and don't do it in this. Like, you're so freaking right. Like, why have I never been able to pierce that veil? It's because we're too close to our own work. You must be critiqued to grow as a writer. Now, I've won awards. I've got hundreds of thousands of fans. I've got, I make a living at this. Could I could I just say screw it? I'm fine and I'm there. Sure. But that's not the type of person I am, because, like in that discussion, I had two basically brand new beta readers had never read me before. That's why I wanted to take advantage of this. And one of them, after I read it, both of them were like, the first one was like, man, I'm a huge Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan fan, and you are 100% right there in league with them. And then the girl was like, yes, 100% I agree with that. And then the guy was like, and I love them, so 100% I'm your fan. And the girl was like, I actually don't love them. I find it very hard to read Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. And then in the background, her husband's screaming, Brandon Sanderson's the best. And so, like, I knew, and so when the guy said that, I knew I had him as a fan. Because if somebody tells me they like Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan, all I got to do is get them to read a page or two of my work, and they're my fan. Like, that's it. I just got to get you to read. You're done. But she said something that made me. The reason why I sent it to Marie was she said, "But I really like this. It's just that there was just a little bit, like." She was like, you don't go anywhere near the level of detail and world building and info dumping that anyone else does. It was actually not bad at all, which means that it didn't kick me out. And once I stayed with it for a couple pages, I was 100% hooked. She's like, but depending on what mood I was in, I might not have given you those 2 pages. So the reason why I'm more focused on her is because she's an almost fan. If I could just figure out how to tweak a couple little things, I wouldn't lose, the first guy. I would still keep him, but I would gain her. And so that's why I sent it to Marie and was like, I know it's there. I know I'm missing something. Show me. Take the blinders off my eyes and give it to me. Um, and so yeah, you have to be critiqued. And so it doesn't stop. But yeah, your fingerprint will grow as you go through here, but you've got to understand that you're writing for other people, not for yourself. And so, and then this has some other problems. It definitely suffers from head book. There's things in this scene that the writer can see, and
Yeah.
they're taking it for granted that the reader can see it, and we can't. It's not here.
Yeah.
It's in your head book. If that doesn't make any sense to you, if that's the first time you've heard that Drakeism, I have kind of coined a bunch of Drakeisms. This one is, you don't realize it, but when you're writing, you're actually writing 2 books simultaneously, one in your head and one on paper. To you, they're the same book. So when you read your paper book, you're also reading your head book at the same time, and you don't notice that there's 2 books, but you can only give away the paper book. So that's why when somebody says, you lost me here, this doesn't make sense, I'm confused here, those are the most important critiques for you, because it means, because what most writers will do is, I don't understand why you don't understand that. It's so obvious. Yeah, it's obvious because it's in your head book. Like, no, don't have that reaction. Go, oh, I screwed up. I didn't put that information for you, did I? I have been a bad steward of information because it's in my head book and I forgot to put it on the paper book. Like, it's that simple. So yeah, there's a lot, but it's gonna be this is gonna be a very telly read. And it, again, as we went through it, it just kept the story's really interesting. I'm actually kind of like, ooh, that's kind of cool. What's going on here? Because you say it's a boy. The way he describes it, he said other people would recognize it as a boy.
Yeah.
But not that it was a boy.
Yeah.
Or a child or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was child, not boy. But anyway. So that got me like, ooh, okay, so it's not a child. It's some weird, you know, demon creature or whatever that can look like a child or whatever. Um, and then there was some really interesting dichotomies of, like, there was there was a paragraph where I was like, okay, they're just playing. And then it was like, and then he stabbed him. It's like, what? Like, they're not playing. like because it almost felt like what it felt like, which was really cool. The author was like, oh, I'm just going to describe these 2 kids playing as if it's way more serious than what it is. And so when he took me down that emotional downgrade and then went immediately up to 11 with he stabbed him in the ribs, it was nice. Now, the only thing I'm worried about now, and again, we haven't read past this, I'm really worried if this is a dream. Because if it is, then it would literally take everything away from what we've done.
Well, we won't find out because we're stopping. If this is a dream, then I really hope that you reconsider.
Do you have anything else to add to any of this one?
No, I think we're done with this one. Let's move on to story number 2. Okay, so this opens with a little flavor text quote. I met an Orcelian once, beautiful feathers. He was walking across my field, bold as day. Only the short-lived races believe in dreams. This is their greatest danger to themselves and us. That's what he said. Never even told him I was tired. Uncatalogued Afroisms. How do you pronounce that word?
Aphorisms.
Afroisms. Ander collection Drakengard.
Aphorisms.
Lavender screamed. Lavender screamed, but the cloying heat of her trapped breath and the scratchy blanket swallowed the words. She threw back the cover, and the brittle night air settled against her like a balm. The nightmare still lingered at the edge of memory, fading, but not fast enough. She closed her eyes, and the images flared again. Flames licking and curling up the family portraits, devouring the generations. The two moons sliding together, their glow warming her tawny skin. Lavender stared up into the dark. It was a dream, just a dream. The sight of the grey wedding proved it, with the conjunction of the moon still almost a year away. Cold rattled Lavender's bones and left her trembling. A forgotten moment burst back to the surface. Errol lay lying sprawled, shirt red with blood. Standing over her brother had been the pale man, the walking nightmare, faced like an empty scratch, a ragged blank space. I might be out at that colon.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am not a fan of colons in prose.
Oh, I'm not.
And I'm sorry to say a punctuation might throw me out, but I might be out at that.
Oh, I didn't hear you say the colon. I'm that pair. So the funny thing is, technically, most agents and acquisitions editors would actually have been out. Just scroll back to the top.
Yeah.
The second paragraph. The nightmare still lingered at the edge of her memory. I think it's stupid. I definitely have started a story this way, but the industry is so gun shy of starting. There's two things that they arbitrarily reject, and I think they're dumb for doing it. One is if you start in a dream. Now, 99% of all dreams are done poorly, and so therefore they deserve to be rejected. But I can see an argument for it working. But the other one, and the one that I think is really petty, is just waking up. They still have this very big prejudice against, if you start a story where the character is waking up, I'm out. And that's why I didn't say anything when you were going, because I definitely would not. But I do know, because I know so many agents and editors now, I do know there's a more than 50% of them that, for literally no other reason than just bigotry of starting a story with a character waking up, they will reject it. And like I said, I don't care. I've had stories that start with characters waking up. I don't see anything wrong with it, especially if you have the hook. And I think the hook was here. The reason why the paragraph with the colon that you were like, oh, colon. So the reason why this is where I'm leaning toward. I mean, everything was so well written. There's a lot of like really powerful verbs in here. There is some good imagery. That freaking opening line with the scream and the blanket, swallowing it or whatever it was, like that was very, very nice. Really enjoyed that. The mistake that's made in this paragraph is I don't care about Lavender. So I definitely don't care about Earl or Errol. She does, and the author does. And so the author is assuming that because Lavender is now trembling over seeing whoever this Errol is dead, that I'm going to care that Errol is dead. But you haven't connected me to Lavender yet. And so this isn't egregious. It's couple lines. And it doesn't look like it's there again. So that's why I said I don't know if I'm out or not.
Well, let me keep reading. I'll explain about the colon later. Okay, so let me keep reading.
Because I don't know if I'm out right here yet or not.
Okay. The walking nightmare faced like an empty scratch, a ragged blank space, a dream. Half-remembered terror clawed back to the surface, urging her up. She jerked, rolling with her blankets. The edge of the bed slid away. Lavender sucked in cold air and cried out again as she fell. Stars burst as her head struck, but she clung to her pillow, trapping it tight against her chest. The impassive wooden planks of the floor filled her vision, and the blanket knotted around her legs. Lavender glared at the floor, fighting the urge to so much as blink, while a whirl in the plank stared back. She lifted her cheek away from the gritty floorboards of her room and pulled her rough blanket tight. Even in the chill air, the memory of searing heat still clawed at her throat. Now, the autumn air reasserted its presence, pushing past the memory. She wrapped her arms over her head, blocking out the world. Clammy sweat clung to her face and soaked her hairline from the nape of her neck all the way to the sharp peaks of her ears. Errol, Milo? She lay still and listened to the silence, snared in the bedclothes.
Yeah.
Okay, you sound like you're in all the way to the end.
So, I mean, yes, there's some things that need to be worked on. There's some definite opportunities to strengthen this piece. But I think because of how much garbage agents and acquisitions have to burn through, that they would look at this and go, okay, this is something I can edit. This is something that with just a little bit of polishing, this could be a really good piece. This is a solid piece. Great
I
verse.
agree. It would be very petty to reject it on the colon, but I'll explain why so that people understand why I'm being petty on this colon. To me, I read a lot of non-fiction documents. I absorb a lot of documents as part of my day-to-day job, right? And a colon is something you see in non-fiction lists, which is followed by a bullet-pointed list. Okay? So you've got colon, I need you to achieve the following tasks. Then there's a colon and then there's a task list.
Right.
Like in bullet points.
Well, I'm
And
not even
so
sure
for
that's
me,
used
that's a
correctly here.
punctuation mark that serves a non-fiction purpose followed by a bullet point list. And I promise you, I don't want to see bullet points in my prose.
Right. I don't even think it's used correctly here. I
Yeah.
don't. My rule is never use a colon in
Yes.
fiction. It just
Yeah.
there's no reason for it. But I'm not even sure it's grammatically correct the way it's used. But again, I'm not going to make a judgment call on that because I don't even study what colons should be used for because I just arbitrarily, it's like, nope, they just don't need to be there. It definitely wouldn't be a semicolon because the next sentence is not a complete sentence. Earl
No, I
Lang
think you could
sprawled.
just have a comma. Like, I think you can just have a comma there.
Right. That's where I was getting to. But I wanted to step down to the semicolon. So it wouldn't be a semicolon because the next one isn't a complete sentence. There's no subject. I'm sorry, there's no action. Or is there no subject? One or the other.
Errol Lang sprawling, shirt red with blood. Yeah, there's no subject.
Yeah, there's no subject.
Errol is lying and he is sprawled, but I don't know.
Right. So anyway, grammar hard. Like it's solid. A couple of things that I would do. So like going back to the I've started waking up. So there's that one chapter in my current work in progress where the farm boy wakes up. And it's really similar to this. He wakes up from a nightmare and he's like, holy crap. Now I do not go into the nightmare or anything like this to like of what it was, but it does say while the nightmares differed from dream to dream, the results did not. In each, the seers had tested him, and then it goes in inner monologue where he says, and I've failed. So the reason why I'm fine with that is it's personal. It is a thing that we're focusing on the character. So since in here, there's nothing that connects me between Lavender and Errol, other than the fact that for whatever reason, him being dead makes her tremble, but there's no connection there. Like, why? So because there's nothing personal and I don't care about anything yet, you haven't earned my desire to care about these ancillary pieces, if that makes sense. So if you are going to start, and again, this doesn't start in a dream. It starts with the character being woken by a dream, which again, that's what I've done at least once. I don't know if I've ever done it other than that, but I definitely have done it once. It still needs to be about Lavender. You need to connect me to Lavender first. You don't worry about connecting me to anything else because if I don't care about Lavender, I don't care about anything else. And you haven't connected me to Lavender yet. And then the only other thing I can say is her getting out of bed became confusing. I don't understand she lost me, or he. I'm just assuming this author is a female, but the author lost me through here. It wasn't painted well enough for me to follow the action. And so it seems weird that you're getting out of your bed that you've gotten out of dozens, if not hundreds of times, and somehow you fall and slam your face into the floorboards.
If I'm reading this correctly, what the author's trying to say is that Lavender rolled. She's rolling in her blankets, and she gets her feet tangled in her blankets because her blankets are all shooken up from the nightmare, and she falls over the edge.
I followed that too, but I can only, when I'm reading, I'm only going to give credit to what is on the page. I don't want to have to guess. And so that's what I feel like I'm doing through here. And that's why I'm saying I'm lost, because I can't see it. You did not paint exactly. And I think it could be fixed with literally a line or a couple even extra words in some of these, just like what you just said. You know, even if it was, and I hate writing on my mouth, but you know, she moved to kick the blankets off of her, but as she, you know, swung her feet to the floor, the blanket came with them or something, whatever. Just something to paint a little bit better of a, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm being taken out by this blanket. Because right now I'm just guessing that it's the blanket. Which means I could be wrong. And it also means that I'm now thinking about what tripped her, and that's not what you want me thinking about when I'm going through this. You want me to think about this other stuff. And so that's the other danger. When you don't paint things, you run the risk of the reader starting to now wonder about things that don't matter to the story.
But I think that, long story short, if you are the author of this piece, congratulations. We made it all the way through to the end, barring my pettiness about the colon. So
yeah, no, very, very, very well done.
All righty, let's move on to story number 3. Rain fell heavily upon the ridges of the cathedral's many pinnacles, draining the waters through the carved pathways out of the manifold mouths of the gargoyles that adorned them. The night was cold and dark.
I'm probably out after the first sentence.
Okay. The night was cold and dark, and inside the cathedral, the noise of the downpour was clearly audible. Father John, however, was paying no heed to the constant static the rain produced, narrowly escaping his... Okay, I'm out. So I'm out on the sentence that should have hooked me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to read a little bit longer so we can see where this is going and then offer some meaningful commentary. Narrowly escaping his assailant as he had exited one of the radiating chapels, the attack had left him with a jagged cut across his right arm, staining his robes with a dark crimson. He had made his way down. Yeah?
I'm out a second time.
Yeah, me too.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'm gonna I know that we've gone on and on and on about flashbacks, but this story is clearly being started too late, right? Because the exciting stuff is here.
But it happened in the past.
It happened in the past. It's all had. It's all in past perfect, which means it's not what's happening to us now. It happened to us 5 minutes ago, and it was exciting, and we don't get to see it.
Yeah, but you don't get to see that. You get to listen to a disembodied spirit describing rain.
Yeah.
That the POV can't even hear. Like, he's not even paying attention to it. So wait, if the POV doesn't notice the rain, then how does the narration notice the rain if the narration is coming from the POV? So, and that's the biggest reason why. So there's 2 reasons why the first sentence is going to throw me out. One, it's a long run-on sentence with a ton of information. And so that's going to, again, that lets me know this is a writer who's going to write in a disembodied way, a very omniscient way, with a bunch of long run-on sentences that are going to, you know, build into nothing, because that's usually what run-on sentences end up doing. So,
and yeah, and I just want to build onto what you've said there. if you're looking at the sentence, count the amount of pieces of information that's in the sentence. We learned that there's rain, it's falling heavily on the ridges. So there's a cathedral with ridges that has many pinnacles, and it drains the water through carved pathways out of the manifold mouths of gargoyles that adorns the cathedral. That is 9 pieces of information in one sentence. That is a lot to put into a reader in the first sentence.
And not only
And
that,
none of it is about the character.
right, it's
All
not
of it is
connected to any.
about an exterior shot, like a movie shot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
nothing that makes me go. So this is another thing I push in the writer's room all the time. There's only 2 ways that a story is going to affect the reader. The reader is either going to go, all right, let me read the next paragraph. All right, let me read the next paragraph. All right, let me read the next paragraph. Or the paragraph is going to go, I dare you to not read me. You must read me. And the reader's gonna be like, oh my God, I cannot wait to get to the next paragraph. Oh my God, I cannot wait to get to the next paragraph. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to get to the next paragraph. Where's the next paragraph? So the reader is either going to have to push through the story or they're going to be pulled through the story.
Yeah.
And this opening paragraph, I am definitely pushing through this story. There's nothing in it that makes me go, there's no open-ended question, there's no conflict, there's no personality. And I don't mean personality as in somebody's personality. What's the word I'm looking for? There's nothing personal to the characters, what I mean by that. Personality, like I guess I'm making up a word here. There's nothing that makes me go, oh, this is somebody that I want to follow, because it's just it's a dude who's not paying attention to the rain for some reason that I just read about, and oh, something exciting happened to him in the past that I don't get to experience. Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So yeah, I think that the lesson on this story is start 5 minutes earlier and show us the assailant.
Well, and we're taking liberties here. I do want to push back on that. The story may have nothing to do with Father John being attacked and narrowly escaping. If it doesn't, then this is a very weird thing to bring up in the first paragraph. So you're probably right. I mean, 99% chance this did just happen 5 minutes ago, and it actually does have relevance. Otherwise, it's even worse. But we didn't read further. So I just want to at least say that when we say if this happened 5 minutes ago, then yeah, that may be the hook. But it also may not even be the hook. We have no idea what this story is.
Could be.
So, but yes, gut check. You have more chance of being right on what the information we have than you have being wrong. I'm just saying I don't want to take the chance of the writer going, well, that has nothing to do with what I was writing. If you had read the next paragraph, you would have known. Like, yeah, but I'm not going to read the next paragraph, so I will never know.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to story number 4. Dan, wake up, man, you're gonna miss it. Stirring from his resting place atop the Atmo processor, Dan remained prone, lazily moving his head in the direction of the disembodied voice of Charlie, keeping his eyes closed as if to ward off the outside world for a moment longer. Yeah, that is a long sentence.
Yeah.
I'm going to read a little further so we get a sense of it, but I think I'm also out on this paragraph. Miss what? Dan sneered. The biggest trillion-dollar fuck-up in the history of humanity? Not that shit again, man. We've been over this, Charlie sighed. Just enjoy the damn show already. It's all we got now. Opening his eyes, Dan looked up at the muddy brown haze filling the sky. It had gotten progressively worse over the last couple of weeks, so much so that the sands had begun clogging up the atmospheric processes they were now babysitting for the workers down in the mine. It was always surprising to what degree the human race can fuck up a good thing, Dan mused. All right, let's see this thing then, Dan said, grunting while he struggled to get up in the 50-pound exosuit he needed to protect himself. A layer of thick grey-brown dust fell off him before being swept off by the winds again. Damn suit always getting in the way, he thought to himself.
Just in case you were worried that he was thinking to Charlie.
Yeah. Charlie was hunched over in his suit. The poor man's exosuit was a hastily put together mishmash of protective gear, and it showed. Funny, Dan thought, craning his neck in his suit. Used to be that we only need those suits out there, and now there's only there's They're only our hope. Okay, so I'm going to stop here
Mm.
because I would definitely be out on this paragraph. But there is actually a lot of interesting things here. So let's talk about why we're out. Why were you out?
Poor punctuation, long run on sentence, nothing's connecting me to the scene, nothing's connecting me to the character that I'm in. And so I feel like, and again, remember when we were talking about when we were out, we're talking about from the industry perspective, not Drake personally. Drake personally might not have ended then.
Yeah.
But this is, again, it's going to let me know what type of writer this person is. And just by this opening paragraph, it means that I'm going to have to work my butt off to edit this piece to get it sellable if I'm an agent. Or if I'm an acquisitions editor, I'm going to have to work my butt off to edit it up to the point where I'm going to be willing to put my company's brand on it to get it out there and sell it. So,
Again, if we look at the amount of information in that sentence, somebody called Dan, presumably, is resting on top of an Atmo processor, which is a new word. He remains prone. He lazily moves his head, because those are two pieces of information, in the direction of the disembodied voice. Now we learn the name of Charlie. And some he is keeping his eyes closed, could be either Dan or Charlie. It points back at Charlie, but I have a feeling it's meant to be Dan.
right.
To ward off the outside world for a moment longer. Again, it's a massive amount of information to
Yeah.
jam into a reader in one sentence.
Yeah.
The reason, like, I was half on it. The reason why this, the reason why this paragraph threw me out, which is Charlie hunched over in his suit, the poor man's exo, that comma has no reason to be a comma. It should be a period or something like that. The
What are you talking about?
sentence is way long. It's poorly punctuated. There's two of them.
What comma are you talking about?
So here, this.
Charlie was hunched over his suit. The poor man's execution. Oh yeah, no, that's another
Yeah.
sentence.
Yeah, that's a completely another sentence. I have no idea why that's a comma.
Well, but I mean, there's a lot of comma mistakes, and you know, commas suck because, well, actually, commas are very easy in the English language. It says always use commas here, except for in these cases, and then don't use them at all. Except for in these cases where you could use it or not use it. Except for in these cases where it really is your call. You can use them or not. Like it's commas are the most confusing. They're not the most confusing because English gets really confusing on a lot of sub things, but commas are hard. They just are. But then we go down the last part of that paragraph. Now out, there's our only hope, as in
Yeah.
possessive theirs are only like,
Yeah.
so, or actually, no, sorry, not possessive,
Yeah.
contracted.
I
So
think
there
it's meant to be
is,
now they are our only hope.
right.
Yeah.
But it says now out, there is our only hope.
Yeah.
So again, so the publisher that published me first, and they're out of business now, but they used to have a wall of shame, and they're out of business. So I can, you know, I don't think I'll get in trouble for saying this, but when query letters would come in, the best of the best that they rejected, they would put on a wall. Now they would never say this to an author. It was all internal. It wasn't something that they rubbed in anyone's faces or whatever. But one of my favorites was the query letter started off with, I know I've never been published. And that's where they rejected them. Because first of all, don't start with a negative. Don't be like, I'm a terrible writer, but this is why I want you to publish me. But also it was, I know I've never been published. I-N-O, I've never been published.
Oof.
If the second word of your query letter is a typo,
Yeah.
sending it to professional writers whose entire life is writing, that's going to get you hung every time. Like it just is. You've got to have a little bit more push to not make the very comma. I mean, a comma out of place, I'll let go, whatever. But when it's, you know, using the wrong there, and I'm dyslexic. I use the wrong there every time I write the stupid words. But then I go back and reread what I've done and I go, is that the right word? Wait, let me go through my memory. And oh no, that's not the right one. Like, and I definitely wouldn't put it in something that was published. So you just have to, I mean, again, it doesn't take much to a sentence is all it takes if you've done this long enough and go, oh, I know how this person writes. I know what their mistakes are going to be through the entire thing. I know it's already going to be there. And then again, if you go through it, it's like, yep. Here's your proof. Here's your proof. Here's your proof. Here's your proof. So you do that long enough, and you realize, yeah, I only need the first sentence, and then I pretty much got 90% of what this, what the quality of this writing is going to be. So this also suffers heavily from headbook. The author can 100% see where they're at when they're writing the scene. I guarantee it. They see the planet, they see the whatever's around them, which I have no idea because we don't know anything but a suit, some wind, and some gray dust. They can see all of it. We can't. We can see nothing. So again, I said this earlier, as quickly as possible, and this is in every scene, not just in your opening chapter, in every new scene, you want to ground the reader in whose head they're in and where they're at, and something that hooks them as fast as humanly possible. Here's how stupid I am with it, and no one notices this. So, it's going to sound really stupid when I call it out. Almost every chapter that I write starts off, the first word is the character's name. Almost every time, like 80% of the time, our dairy went and got a cup of water, like literally. And it's something I did as a dumb little writer 30 years ago because someone was like, ground them in the head as quickly as possible. I'm like, well, if I put the narrator's name first, like I can't get quicker than the first word. And so no one notices it. No one is like, oh my goodness, he's so baby with his thing. And so I still do it because it just I know it sounds silly, but it does. But the character's name is always if it's not the first word, it's in the first sentence. If it's not in the first sentence, it's in the first paragraph. If it's not in the first paragraph, it's because the character doesn't know who they are. And so therefore I'm not going to let the reader know who they are. So I'm actually doing it on purpose, but those are very few and far between, and only because it specifically needs to happen that way. Other than that, almost every chapter starts, every scene starts with the character's name. But the readers need to know where they're at and who they're in. Otherwise, they're floating. And the problem with this is you as the writer, when you type that first letter, you know whose head you're in and you know where you're at. But that's in your head book. You must get that to the readers. Unless, again, there's a reason for not getting it to them because there's going to be this huge payoff. So we start off with the boy, and then a page later, when I learn what the boy is, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. Because there was a payoff to the fact that you gave me this generic the boy at the beginning of it. So that's the big thing with this. It really just suffers from head book and not getting that information to the reader.
Yep. Okay. Story number 5. Mommy, 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 are we there yet? Sebastina cried. Not yet, Mom replied. What are we going to do when we get to Grandma Sheila's house? Her brother Hunter asked. You'll see when we get there, Mom said. Sebastina loved the feeling of the red dirt on her paws in the Australian outback. She and her brother Hunter got to go to Grandma Sheila's house in Alice Springs every day in the winter while their mom helped with the Royal Flying Doctor service. Hunter was sad that there weren't any flies in wintertime. They were his favorite. I'm out.
Probably me too. But the only reason I'm saying I'm not is this sounds very middle grade-ish. It is still not great for middle grade, but middle grade is very different and has a very different criteria than what me and you normally talk about because it's what I've already very, very little middle grade. It's
Fair point.
definitely not
Let me read a couple more paragraphs and we'll see where this goes. Grandma Sheila was lying on her doggy hammock basking in the outback sun when her daughter and grandpuppies ran up. One ear perked up, then the other, and just as she opened her eyes, her granddaughter Sebastina pounced on her to start licking her face. The doggy hammock nearly toppled over as the Australian cattle dogs all did a dog pile greeting each other with glee. Okay. I'm definitely out.
Yeah.
I understand that it's middle grade, I get it, but this would have to be like for an what is middle grade? What age group?
That would be 6th grade to 9th grade, so 11 to 14.
Yeah,
But
no.
really, middle grade these days,
No.
have dropped to probably about 8, 7, 8 is where it starts.
Yeah.
And then,
I would at most say that this is for like 8-year-olds, maybe 9-year-olds.
yeah,
Um, and the reason why I say that is because not just is it simply written, but I'm not grounded in Sebastina because I'm jumping from head to head in the dog pack.
yeah.
Um,
Also, where the last author used commas where they weren't needed, there's a whole bunch of commas needed. Like, and it also hides, I mean, it's a lot of run-on sentences. I mean, look at the first big sentence in the first big paragraph. Sebastina loved the fleeing of the red dirt on her, or the feeling, sorry, of the red dirt on her paws. Oh no, sorry, that is a period there. It's the next one
yeah.
that's really long. She and her brother Hunter got to go to grandma's house in Alice Springs every day in the winter while their mom helped with the Royal Flying Doctor service. That is a long run-on sentence.
Yeah. Yeah. So so
It's
there's a
also
lot
not
of run on and I mean the thing is also with middle grade, you really can't have run on sentences,
right.
as far as I know. Like your sentences need to be
Much tighter,
um
much shorter,
yeah.
much more concise.
Yeah, because you're dealing with kids who, aren't perhaps that confident in their reading yet. You can't give them something they're going to struggle to pass.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it isn't as bad as chapter books. So the step
Mm.
before middle grade would be chapter books. And, now you're talking about people that are reading for the first time books. So like
Yeah.
the Magic Treehouse series is a chapter book series. That's for your 5, 6, 7 year olds that, they're moving away from the picture books that mom and dad are reading to them, the Dr.
Mm.
Seuss's and stuff like that. And they're moving into, I'm gonna read on my own.
Mm.
And so those are even, obviously this wouldn't be as simplistic as those sentences need to be, but
Yeah.
we still want to avoid. I mean, you want to avoid run-on sentences at all grade levels, including
Yeah.
adult, but it's also slipping between in medias res and not. So we start
Yeah.
off in the moment, but then we are not in the moment with the whole backstory and royal flying doctor service and all this other stuff, and then we're in the moment, and so yeah, it's a lot of back and
And
forth. There's no hook. There's nothing
yeah.
that makes me go, oh my goodness. And again, we talked about earlier, do I have to read the next paragraph, or does it force me to not be able to read the next paragraph? And there's nothing in here that makes me go, oh, I cannot wait for that next paragraph, because we
Yeah.
don't have an open-ended question. We don't really have a good solid head that we're in. And even in middle grade, you still want to hold a good tight POV. Uh,
Mm.
you can definitely be more in the free internet discourse where you're slipping between your and Sanderson hates when I explain it this way because he does teach the MFA course at BYU, but um I like to teach free internet discourse as you have two narrators. You have the character narrator, who's your limited narrator, and then you do have a disembodied narrator that is only a camera, is not, has no opinion, has no emotions, has no feelings, has no anything. It is literally just a visual camera that technically could smell something occasionally or whatever, but that's still no opinions with it, no intelligence to it or anything like that. And so middle grade is a lot more lenient with that because because those become telly, but that's
Yeah.
okay because we want to make sure we don't lose our reader in, if they're 8 to 12 year olds, which is your normal middle grade kind of range. I screwed up because I don't know why I started, but I started with what is actual middle grade in America. but that's not middle grade as the genre. So I wanted to
Oh,
correct that.
okay.
Middle grade for genre is 8, 9 to 12, 13, in that range. You get into 14, that's when you're getting into your YA, early YA, and then YA. So,
Mm.
And then chapter books are your, 5 to 7, 8 year olds in that range. So, middle grade is a lot more lenient for the, oh, look, we're gonna do this telly moment where I'm gonna do a paragraph of showing them the farm and showing them the whatever. But still it's not here. I can't see anything. And so your child reader is definitely not going to know where anything is at.
I mean, I the other day reread one of my favorite middle grade books for don't ask why. I did. I wanted to check some world building elements. And even though like some of it still holds, like it still has a tight POV, which is nice and so on, they are by their nature more tally. So there was big tally chunks in it. And that's fine for the genre. And you must bear in mind your genre. But the head hopping was too egregious for me.
So as we've talked about before, and maybe not on the podcast, but I know you know
Mm,
this, I divide everything that I've ever consumed entertainment wise into two halves. There's pre-Drake and
mm.
there's post-Drake. So there are things that
Yeah.
I loved before I became a professional writer that I literally cannot even look at now. Um, and so this was read pre-Drake. However, I have used it now a couple times in the writer's room as an example. So I've only read the first opening paragraph or two, but it is post-Drake awesome. So this is a middle grade book. It's called Bunnicula, A Rabbit Tale of Mystery. And it was I loved it because we actually had the audiobook when we were on trips with the young boys when they were like 3 and 4 and 5. But the opening, I'll just read the first two paragraphs
Mm,
to show the middle grade kind of mentality. I really think this is about
mm,
the top level of that. So, chapter 1, The Arrival. I shall never forget the first time I laid these now tired old eyes on our visitor. I had been left home by the family with the admonition to take care of the house until they returned. That's something they always say to me when they go out. Take care of the house, Harold. You're the watchdog. I think it's their way of making up for not taking me with them, as if I wanted to go anyway. You can't lie down at the movies and still see the screen, and people think you're being impolite if you fall asleep and start to snore or scratch yourself in public. No, thank you. I'd rather be stretched out on my favorite rug in front of a nice whistling radiator. But I digress. I was talking about that first night. Well, now this gets telly, and that's a
yeah.
shame, but still. Well, it was cold. The rain was pelting the windows, the wind was howling, and it felt pretty good to be indoors. I was lying on the rug with my head on my paws, just staring absently at the front door. My friend Chester was curled up on the brown velvet armchair, which years ago he'd staked out as his own. I saw that once again he'd covered the whole seat with cat hair, and I chuckled to myself, picturing the scene tomorrow. So, you know, and
Yeah.
then it goes on. But like,
But it stays in the POV of the dog.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we literally get we meet the family next, and then
Yeah.
we get to see the terrifying monster rabbit that they think is a vampire rabbit. And that's kind of the whole story, is them trying to figure out what this rabbit
Yeah.
actually is. So, but yeah, so we get connected to the character. Now it is in first person, so that is, a lot of people don't realize how hard first person is. First person, one of the biggest things that you need to concentrate on is a character voice of the narration. The
Yeah.
narration itself needs to have a unique voice, and this one has a very unique voice. I mean, Harold, his voice is wise but a little sarcastic, a little snarky, but also um mature kind of. He's an older dog. And so you get
Mm,
that through his voice. And so notice we're in the moment. We're only getting details that are pertinent to us at the moment. We're getting characterizations like we meet Chester, but then we find out that, Chester's being a naughty kitty because he's got his hair all over everything. And
Yeah.
we all know what that's going to mean when the family finds out about it.
Yeah.
We get that they're with little things like, years ago he had staked out as his own. We know, oh, okay, so these two have been together for a while.
Yeah.
So I really do love this. And again, that's as far as I've ever read post Drake.
Yeah.
I read the whole thing pre Drake, but post Drake, that's all I've ever done. But
Yeah.
it's a great example of pulling the reader in. And it's like now, like I get through that and I'm like, oh no, I can't wait to read the next paragraph. Oh, what's going to happen in the
Yeah.
next paragraph? Oh, what's going to happen in the next paragraph? It's pulling me through the story as opposed to me having to go, all right, fine, I'll read one more paragraph.
Even middle grade fiction has to ground you in the POV.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't get to
Okay.
see the room yet, but we see enough of the room to know, all right, we're in a house, we're in a family house. There's a radiator, there's a rug, there's chairs. Like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. As the story goes on, the house
And
expands.
that's, I mean, that's honestly enough for middle grade, like you set your genre up as, there are genre expectations, especially when it's as specific as middle grade fiction.
Right.
All right. Are we ready for story number 6?
Yep.
Okay. Raven Dick smiled at the news scrawled on the chalkboard. Miracle scheduled until sunset. Outside, desert winds buffeted against the metal building, highlighting the surrounding chaos. But inside the makeshift clinic, fragile hope survived. Raven elbowed the lion shifter next to her and tipped her head to challenge his gaze. See? Plenty of time. Tao Khan oofed and held his ribs in mock indignation, but not for the boy. I wager 3 ginger candies number 972 will scurry back to the dump before his allotted appointment. His name is Hazen, and not gonna happen. In fact, I'll raise you 3 lemon drops. You cannot save one who refuses. Raven threw her weight against the antechamber door and winked at her best friend. Watch me. Except the stubborn hinges refused to yield. Ugh, so much for the dramatic exit. Wisely, Tao pushed the door open in silence and remained quiet through the ozone blast cleaning. Raven left first. Despite the wind kicking literal sand in her face, nothing would mar this joyful moment. Certainly not a grumpy lion or a scared human boy. From behind her glasses, Raven squinted against the sun's glare. The nearby barbed wire fence exuded despair, but she knew better. The clinic's compound of pale blue shifting containers modified for desert living delineated a corner of healing, a place of significance. Beyond the barrier, an endless expanse of beige tents overflowed with Syrian refugees scraping out a marginal existence. Raven secured her headscarf around her pointed ears and searched the compound for the forgotten one who needed her. The shadow of a certain lion shifter dogged her every twist and turn. Wisely, she kept that metaphor to herself. The first 2 places failed beyond blanketing her in a new layer of dust, the never-ending dust. Clothes, skin, tongue, not even magic was immune to the infernal dust. She ignored the trio of werewolf nurses huddled in the shade between 2 storage containers. Here's hoping they would return the curtsy. But no, the shortest one tutted. Hey, Tao, tell your Fey changeling to stop wasting your time searching for strays and slaying their dragons. They'll come crawling back when they're truly desperate. He merely grunted and continued to cover her 6.
I think we've probably gone far enough.
Where are you out?
So the industry, I think, would be there's no scene setting at all. You don't really know where you're at. And I so that's what I would, if this piece was put in front of me for critiquing, that's what I would want. Again, you need to ground the reader in what's around us. Love the opening line. There's one of your colons.
Yes.
And that's actually used correctly.
Yes, that is used correctly. I could tolerate that vaguely. I would still prefer something else, but I could tolerate that one.
I mean, it's used correctly. So,
for me, the problem was I didn't understand what was going on.
Right.
I think that this author suffers a lot from headbook problems.
Yep.
They have a heap of headbook problems.
Yep. And that's why I think the industry would have been out sooner.
Yeah.
but the writing was good.
Yeah.
The grammar's good. Um, a few little things like the banter between the two shows friendship. So she
Yeah.
winked at her best friend is a little gratuitous.
Yeah.
Little things like that can tighten it up. But solid writing, solid character interaction with the dialogue, no internal
Also
emotion.
interesting. Like I did like this first line of "miracles scheduled until sunset." That is a fun line.
Yep.
It's a nice opening line to
Love the
start with,
opening line.
Yeah. Great opening line. And then the shifters being apparently part of this refugee camp, it's interesting, but I don't get enough of what is going on.
Mhm.
And so I'm feeling confused.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And
that's what I
that
said.
is in
I
the
think the
scene
industry would
setting.
have been out somewhere in paragraph 4 or 5, but like little
Yeah.
things could go such a long way. So Raven elbowed the lion shifter next to her and tipped her head back to challenge his gaze. See, plenty of time. Then we have his reaction, which is great, but like
Mm.
I want to
Where's
see
the boy?
right there. This is that moment where it's like, um, you know, you could write maybe over the wounded boy, Tao oofed as he held his whibs, whatever. I mean, I'm just saying there's these little one-liners, half-liners that you add in that start to build what the scene looks like. As we talked
Yeah.
about on an earlier podcast, how do you organically scene set? You have the scene interact with the character or the character interact with the scene. The characters are interacting with the characters,
Mm.
but that leaves the scene out.
Yeah.
There's no, yeah, we know that there's dust because it the sand hits her in the face and all of that. I think it even literally hits her in the face.
Yeah.
So a little superfluous
Little bit
there
down. Yeah.
because anything you
There's
describe is
the
literally
dust, the
happening.
infernal dust, the wind kicking literal sand in her face.
Right. Um, I mean so like with this one, is there a difference between kicking literal sand in your face versus kicking sand in your face? If I say kicking sand in your face, are you going to be thinking, yeah, but is it real sand? Or is it, are you just lying to me and it's some type of weird fake sand? Like,
Yeah.
no, I mean, the literal doesn't do anything there. But those are very minor little errors and edits.
Yeah.
Nothing that's gonna. It's a solid piece. There's no internal emotions, so there's nothing to connect me to Raven. It's
Yeah.
all external.
Yes.
So a long time ago, there's a I don't usually read published authors that I become friends with because I'm weird, and if they let me down writing wise, I do sometimes hold that against them, and I shouldn't. So I'm a snob when it comes to writing, so I just try not to. But there was a friend of mine, he'd been a friend for a couple years, and I did not hold this against him. So I still love the man to death. But a couple years, I mean, probably 5 years into us knowing, he's like, I've never read anything of yours. I don't think you've read anything of mine. I'm like, nope, I haven't. He's like, you want to trade books? And so I'm like, inside, I'm like, ah. But I was like, yeah, sure, let's do that. Outside, I'm all smiles. And I read it. I got about 5 chapters into it, and it just didn't do anything for me at all. Nothing bad. It was good writing. It was exactly like that right there that we just read. That's why this reminded me of it. It's fine. But 4 or 5 chapters into it, I was just like, meh, and I put it on my shelf and I forgot about it. And then about a month later, he wrote me an email. He said something to me that no human has ever said to me about my writing. And so it piqued my interest. He said, so I read your book. You're a really good storyteller, but you're very telly. You need to learn to be more showy. And so I was like, okay, interested. And I wrote him back and I said, I obviously do not see what you're seeing. Could you point out some things and show me what you mean by tell? Because I obviously don't understand this. I always put the onus on me. It's I'm the one that's dumb. Teach me what I'm doing wrong. And so he wrote me back and he literally said, you're telling when you show anything the camera can't see. You can only show what a camera can see in your prose. And I went, that's why I never got hooked in his story. It was all external visual. There was literally nothing that connected
Internal.
me internally to anything. And so of course I wrote him back and I was like, oh man, thank you so much. I really appreciate, I'm not going to argue. Like, and that's the other reason why. I mean, they're published authors. Whatever. They have their thing. They have their fan base. They make their living. I'm not going to, rain on their
Yeah.
parade. Who says I'm right? So
I
that's what
I
this was.
encountered an author on Critique Circle who told me you can only have internal thoughts on a character if you're writing in first person. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I didn't take their critiques
Well, of
again
course.
because I'm not going to argue with you, but you're wrong.
Right. So that's what this one read to me. It's all external. It's all, so I write movie scripts. That's what you get in a movie script. You can never write anything a camera can't see because the actors can't do it. Like,
Yeah.
He felt really bad for having left his wife, but figured one day he would make up for it. Like, okay, how is the actor going to show that on screen? Like, good luck with that. So yeah, when you're writing a movie script, it's a completely different animal. But there's a reason why people say, the movie was good, but man, the book was better. Why was the book better? Because you are literally inside the character where you can't be with a movie. And so when there's a lot of people that write prose where they truly believe that you're telling, and
I,
that was the word he used. He said you were
uh,
telling. You can only show, you're a showy writer only if you show what cameras can see.
I do want to say, though, talking of books and movies, that I do think the Twilight movies were about as good as the book.
Oh, that was rude. That was just mean.
I was not the target audience for
Yeah, no,
Twilight.
neither was I. Neither was I.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not Bash Twilight. That book's long gone. But so with this last story that we just read,
Mm.
there's nothing wrong with the writing. And actually the character interaction was great. The dialogue is really engaging. It's organic. The situation seems really interesting, but you're relying on those visual elements like, oh, look, there are werewolf nurses. And you're going, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Reader, doesn't that make you really connected to this story? No. Like, it's cool, but why do I want to keep reading? Because there's werewolf nurses. Like, what do they do? Again, this is why I teach it in my writing classes. I say, look, it's not about the how and the what. We have to write the how. How does the character do this and what do they do next? We have to write that. They have to see the werewolf nurses, blah, 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 the how and the what. You got to write it. But no one cares about the how and the what. They care about the why and the effect. And so every time you write a how and a what, you must include the why and the effect. Because the why and the effect are what is going to grab the reader and make them care about what they're reading. Always focus on the why and the effect. The why is the character doing this, or why is it important to the character, or why does it matter to the character, and what effect does it have on the character and the world around them? Like, that's what the reader cares about. That's what's going to hook the reader. Those are the two things that make them go, oh, I can't wait to read that next paragraph. If you just have, like this last author had, if you just have the how and the what's, then they have to go, well, I mean, werewolf nurses. I'll read the next
Cool,
paragraph.
but why do I care? Yeah.
Right. I'll read it, but
Yeah.
I'm now making the decision to read that next paragraph as opposed to, if I got hit with werewolf nurses and then I find this effect or this thing that matters to this character that I'm in the head, I'm like, ooh, okay, I cannot wait to read the next paragraph to figure out what's going on here. Because again,
Yeah.
why, effect. Those are the two things that are going to pull that reader through the story. The how and the what have to happen. You cannot not write how and what. Like, otherwise, no one would be able to see the scene.
Yeah.
It's sort of like with the bed scene with the blankets. There wasn't
Mm.
enough how and what, so we kind of got lost, or at least I did
Mm.
in that moment. Um, So we need that. We need the how and the what. But
Yeah.
that's not, I don't care. I don't care that the blankets got wrapped around the girl's thing and she slammed her face into the floor. That I just need that so that I'm not lost.
Yes.
It's always the why and the effect.
I think for me, the biggest thing with the last piece that we read was simply that I could not visualize what was going on, and I didn't understand where the boy fit in or where the clinic fit in or anything like that.
It was
And there was just not enough scene setting
yeah.
as well. So
So that's the last thing about that piece.
yeah.
And I hate this word, and I'm trying to come up with a new word. And then once I come up with it, I'll try to figure out how to force the industry to use it. But there was no conflict. And the reason why I hate
It,
that word is everyone immediately goes to, oh, there's no punching people in the face. That's not, no, it just,
that's not conflict.
it's a hook. It's anything
Yeah.
that it's an open-ended question. It's a unique situation. It's a dire situation. It's a anxiety. It's anything that makes me go, all right, no, I want to find out what happens with that. Where's
Yeah.
this going? And so, and again, you get that from the why and the effect and not the how and the what. So yeah,
I
nothing
think
wrong with the piece.
like,
It was actually well written. Just
yeah,
it needs more.
especially in your opening chapter, you have to have something early on to grab my attention. You have to convince me to at least keep going to the bottom of the page. Because then you've bought enough loyalty that I'll flip through a few pages and check it out and see how it goes. But if you lose me in that first few paragraphs because I get confused, or because I don't understand what's going on, or because I don't feel connected to the POV, I'm just going to put the book down, because at this point I've invested nothing. I lose nothing by putting the book down.
Mm-hmm. Right. So like last night in my critique group, one of the guys read a piece where it was very front loaded with world building. Like
Mm.
this is because and I understand. He was like, but if they don't understand this giant war between, these two things, they're not going to understand anything. And I'm like, but do I need to understand the war to understand this moment of this character's life? And he was like, no, not at all. But then again, I was out on the very first word because the very first word was prologue. Um, and so I was like, and there was this magical thing that they found in this thing. And he was like, but see, you need this because I'm going, I've heard you say the prologue thing, but you're wrong. And this proves it. And I was like, really? So when do they use this magical thing? And he was like, um, end of act two. I'm like, yeah, I will have forgotten it by then. This prologue doesn't do what you think it does. like,
Yeah.
like it, I don't like, you're giving me
World
information that I'm
building is
totally going to be,
never the reason to write a prologue.
yeah,
Never, ever, ever write world building as a prologue.
no,
You are absolutely using the prologue wrong. I will die on this hill.
yeah, no, 100%. Pretty much in your opening book, I've never seen a prologue done correctly. Second book, third book, great. There's plenty of things to use it for. But again, as we've talked about many times, you've now earned the loyalty of the reader. So like I use prologues, and I think you do it for the same thing, where I will use a prologue to get you into the villain's head for one scene because you're never going to be in the villain's head. And so here you go, but now you're like, ooh, I'm invested. And so yeah, let me get a little glimpse into what this person's world is like that I'm trying to hate and want to see die and want to see defeated, whatever. You've earned that. They want it not because it's good information, but because now they're invested. Now they have a desire to learn this stuff, as opposed to when you did it at the beginning of your first book, when it's very, very important to you and it's very, very exciting to you and it's very, very, it matters a lot to your story because you know the story. I said this earlier with that one story. You know that character from the very first letter that you write. You know the scene. You know everything.
Yeah.
Your job is to understand that as a storyteller, you must give that to the reader, and you must do it quickly.
And I think that is a good note on which to end this podcast. And we will see you soon for another one.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. This is Marie Mullaney, your co-host on this literary adventure. Our goal is to provide you with valuable insights and discussions on writing. If you believe in our mission, please like and subscribe our podcast. Sharing our episodes with your community not only helps us grow, but also contributes to a richer, more diverse conversation about storytelling. We appreciate your support. For a deeper understanding of the topics we've discussed, head over to Just in Time Worlds on YouTube. It is a treasure trove where fantasy meets history and science. Every Tuesday, you'll find new videos that delve into the intricacies of world building, drawing from our rich real-world history. Whether you're a writer, a role player, or just a fantasy enthusiast, Just in Time Worlds offers unique insights that will enrich your perspective. Check it out and join the journey of crafting incredible worlds.
If you are ready to take your writing to the next level and work with a group of highly motivated, dedicated writers who are all working to not only improve their writing, but improve your writing, plus you get to work with me on a weekly basis, then I'll encourage you to check out writersroom.us. This is a website that I have created that I really wish I had 30 years ago. It's everything a writer needs to become a better writer. Not only do we do weekly critique sessions, both from other members as well as me, we have daily writing sessions, I do monthly classes, Q&As, we have activities, I do all sorts of learning exercises, such as I do a quarterly writing prompt contest, and just tons and tons and tons of things. So if you're ready to get serious about your writing and you want to actually finish that novel and have a chance of it being published, then I encourage you to head on over to the Writer's Room and join me there. And as a special promotion for listeners of Releasing Your Dragon, and as a special promotion for listeners of Releasing Your Inner Dragon, I'll go one step more. If you would like to get 50% off for 3 months, reach out to me. There's a million ways you can do that. You can do it through starvingwriterstudio.com, drakeu.com, any of my social medias such as LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, whatever. Reach out to me, say that you would like to check out the Writer's Room for 50% off, and I will send you a link that will allow you to do just that. So hopefully you're ready to start getting serious about writing, and I'll see you in the Writer's Room.